everybody. I know we have some Quality Improvement Workgroup members and I believe some Quality Improvement Specialists that are joining us. And thank you, Mary, for thinking about inviting the specialists. It's a great idea. I mean, you folks who are the specialists, you're out there in the field and you've got, you're working closely with the participants. So we really would be interested, me in particular, I would be interested in any feedback, suggestions, resources that you think might be helpful to add to the resource guide. We've been plugging away at it. We've got quite a bit of it done, but still working on other sections of it. It's a work in progress, but we're definitely interested in your feedback. So feel free to email me or Barbara Hogan, and if you need our emails, Mary has those, and we'd be happy to get those to you. So with that said, I'm just going to introduce Ariel, if she is able to talk to us. Ariel is from CUNY. She's been working with us to develop the resource guide, and she and Hamish are going to do the webinar for us today so they can walk us through it and let us know the changes that have been recently made to it. So hit it, Ariel.
I'll just give this to you. Okay. Hi. I'm actually just going to introduce Hamish and then let him take it away. Hamish is PDI's very talented web and database administrator. He builds all the websites and data systems for PDI's many projects, so Quality Stars New York, New York Works for Children, the Aspire Registry, the Informal Child Care Project, and the Career Development Services Center. So he works in our offices with everyone to think through and address the structure and design of our technical needs and projects, and we are really thrilled that he's working with us to develop the resource guide because we really feel it's going to be a very useful tool for specialists and for programs and providers. So just a brief overview of the webinar. Today I think we're just going to do an introduction. I know some of you are familiar with it, but since we're recording it and a lot of people haven't seen it, we are just going to go through it quickly again. We are going to we're going to discuss its purpose and intended uses, and consider interface issues of the site and discuss current usability and our vision for how the resource guide will work and change in the future. And finally, we're going to discuss the individual resources themselves and how we plan on having providers access them, and exactly how we code and present them on the back end and present them on the Quality Stars New York website. We can take comments and questions as we go along, but we will save room at the end to address them. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Hamish. We are sort of sharing a computer and headset, so bear with us for 1 second. All right.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Hamish.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so sorry about all the wackiness. You'd think I would have my software up to date and everything, but it is a pain in the neck when we have to go through the help desk. But okay, so it looks like we're here. Is everybody seeing the screen? Everybody that needs to?
Mm-hmm. I can. This is Kimberly.
Okay, great. All right. So I'm going to take us back to the home page just to show where we have access to the guide itself. So on each landing page for providers, for parents and families, and on the main homepage there's reference to the guide. So, and for now this is the working title, Standards Resource Guide. I know there's some brainstorming we want to do on how to actually brand it to be a little more enticing and a little more descriptive. But I'm going to go right in there to Standards Resource Guide. So when you go in here, you have a brief description, and then the first step is to just select the set of standards that is relevant to, if you're a QI specialist, the population that you're working with, or if you're a provider in the program, obviously the set of standards that applies to you. So I'm just going to go in through the center-based standards here. So, and now we know that we have some ideas for how to make this process a little bit smoother of filtering through the standards to find the one that you want to engage with. But for now, you have your major standards areas here, learning environment, family engagement, and so on. Those are slightly different for the home-based, as you know, and they are customized. They are tailored to the set of standards and what those actually are. So you just select one. Yep.
Hamish?
Yeah.
Hamish, can you hear me? It's Sandy.
I can, yes.
Yeah. Are we supposed to be able to open up the standards guide by clicking on it? Because I'm not able to do that.
From which part? From here?
I'm not.
I'm on the home page
Uh-huh.
where we started, and on the right side of the screen it says Standards Resource Guide.
Yeah, where it's blue.
Your screen is not.
Yeah.
Is my screen not showing?
Is your screen coming up?
Yeah, it's just, this is Kimberly Hamish. I'm not seeing it either. All I see is just the home page, and that's it. Nothing else.
When I click, it's not going through?
Correct.
Oh, you know what? The screen is paused. Okay, sorry. Oh, I'm glad you guys spoke up. Okay, yeah, the screen was paused. It should work out. I didn't want to zero in. Oh, no, I'm not going to try to do that. Okay. All right. So now do you see my mouse moving? See highlighting? Okay. All right, great. So the ways to the standards guide, just so you know, if you go in through Foundations of Quality here, the Standards Resource Guide is the last option there. And also you can go through the featured resources here. It's the top featured resource. So I'm going to go through to there. Okay. Now, as I said before, I'm going to select my set of standards that I want to look at, and then select an area to go into. So I'm just going to go into Learning Environment. And if we're in Learning Environment, you can see we have the next level down. I'm not exactly sure what the labels are. I know these are the standards areas across the top. What's the name of these? Subcategories. Okay, so I'm going to select my subcategory. And I realize this is pretty awkward to navigate, but our next phase we definitely have some ideas and are excited to hear your ideas as users, especially the QI specialists, as people who will be both experts in the content and also on the user end of trying to navigate this, ideas they have for the interface. So I'm going to go into the CE substandard, and here I have my list. I can see the language of the standards here, and then select one to view the full profile of that resource. Okay. So basically, with the resource guide, there's a few goals that we're trying to accomplish with it in terms of making it useful for everyone involved in Quality Stars. And we have the clarification statements up here that the work group has worked on. And so this is obviously to enrich the understanding, deepen the understanding of the standard, and relay to the users of the standards the importance of that individual standard. So that's a really important piece to have on the interface. So we have that up top. And then down here we have the language of the standard itself. The highlighted terms have definitions that will pop up in the glossary, but we're planning to have them just pop up in place when you click those so that you can get definitions for some of these terms. And over here, the documentation requirements. Some of the standards have a little bit more information and instruction about documentation. So we have deepening understanding up here with the clarification statement. We have defining the documentation in standard language, and then an additional purpose of the resource guide is instruction in how to meet the standard. So we have some additional notes in the yellow box here about meeting the standard, and then in some cases the individual documentation items will also have some additional instructions. CE2, for example, has a little note here, a note that is becoming, will need to be changed, but you can see those are in gray and italics. Underneath, if there were several bullet points here, each would have one. So the third part, or the fourth purpose of the resource guide is presenting materials and examples that are necessary for understanding and completing this standard, meeting this standard. So this one has quite a few, and it has all these resources listed down here. Some of them are online, Some of them are print resources, and we can talk about that. And particularly with the CE, this is a rather long list because it actually incorporates the resources that used to be in the clarification statement. So those were listed down here. Ariel used that as an opportunity to experiment with the back end of the resource database, which I'll be showing you in a little bit. And put all of those resources that were listed there and put them in the database so that they would show up with the list of resources. And we would have some flexibility as to how we presented those, where we presented those, because once they're listed in the database, we can bring them up on any interface that we want in any place, so we can really play around with presenting them in the best way. As you saw on CE2, there are some documentation-specific resources that really help you with the process of documenting that standard when you go through the Quality Stars process. Versus more general understanding and general materials you need for meeting the standard. These will quite often, the documentation resources will be templates or example materials. And then down here you have the full glossary that you can open up for all the terms that appear in this standard. And then also if you click a glossary item, it jumps you down to read about it. Obviously not the best way to do things. We're hoping to do a pop-out of that definition soon. So what I'll do next is I'll take you to the database and I'll show you all the things that we know about each resource, all the information about each resource that we store in the database that allows us to make decisions about how to present, and also allows me in the code to use different ways of presenting and grouping and highlighting the different resources. So let me just get another window up. Okay. So I'll just point out quickly that we actually store these resources in the same big database that we store a lot of information that PDI uses, and the reason that I did that is because we do want to have the opportunity to cross-list every resource that we put in, not only with the Quality Stars project, but if we make them generally available resources, then they can be drawn upon for other projects as well. And we actually have some projects going now that are drawing on these resources. But as long as we tag and flag the resources in a single way, an agreed upon way, or sorry, the computer's going a little haywire. Oh, I don't know. I think I might have lost my connection. I don't think so. Can everyone still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, the machine just went a little haywire. I think it had some memory problems. I may have too many programs open. Ariel, do you want to close a few things? I think it's panicking over the amount of stuff I'm trying to do.
Now it knows how we all...
Yeah, right? I know how easily we can all get overwhelmed. Okay, yeah, just in case. Yeah, that should actually buy us quite a bit.
I don't want to...
Oh no.
Oh, well, thank you.
Oh, is the webinar open in Firefox?
Get me out of there.
Oh, right, if you close individual tabs.
Still there.
Oh, I see.
That'll be enough.
Yeah, just close this because we're not using that.
I thought I could be...
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So does everybody see the page PDI database search resources?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. So we're back in action. Okay, so this is a basic interface that we use if we want to look at some of the resources that are stored in this database. And you get a little bit of a preview of the knowledge that we have and that we're storing about this resource. So I'm just going to search by title and give a very general search string so that I get a lot of resources. And this will be one that either, yes.
Hamish,
I think I'm still having some computer. Yeah, it keeps telling me that I'm having memory problems. Are there any other tabs you want to close, or you want to pause? You can pause screen sharing if you want. That'll never close. That's a very aggressive program. I don't think it is. Okay. Let me know if I start to break up again. Hopefully that gave us a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, you sound better. So.
Okay. So I could search here for resources based on the title that someone has entered, and like say, these are resources that I would have entered if I found some. Someone from another department of PDI may have entered, and they can put them all in the database so that we can all utilize helpful things that each other has put in. But you can also look at who put it in, so you know you're only dealing with your own if you want to make changes and things like that. So I'm just going to take a look at these resources. So when we search for the resources that are in the database, I just put in an A because I knew that would bring up a lot of stuff. And then I can show you an example. So helps and hints for family child care directors. This is the profile of an individual resource. So the purpose in showing you this is just to show you all the things that we can store in the database, all the information that we can know about an individual resource. And these, of course, are the resources that show up in the guide. So here's the title. We can add a subtitle. And then if we want to display as something different, if for some reason we want the title to be shorter when it displays or some additional information, we can make that different from the official title of the resource if it's a book or something that they need to look up. Select whether it's available online or whether it's print, something they'll need to get from the library, or if it's a VHS or a DVD that they need to pick up. We can check either one of those, and if we want to, we can use that information that we've stored to present them differently on the interface, either group, print, and online together, or put a little icon that shows that they can get it online, or some other way of presenting that information. We can put in a link to the file. Either we upload a file ourselves or we enter a URL if it's on some other website, if it's a link to something on OCFS's website or something like that, we can put in a full URL. And it tells us what the current link is here that we currently have stored in the database. So right now it's a PDF that we uploaded to our own server. So it's a resource that we have. You can also tag the medium. So here it would be PDF, doc, or presentation slide, other things like websites, web tool, a book reference, organization, video, so that if down the road we wanted people to be able to filter for any reason on any interface through the resources based on what kind of resource they are, or we wanted to present that, put a little book icon next to books, or even if on a totally separate page from the resource guide we wanted to have helpful books for, being a Quality Stars participant, we could just query the database and say, show us all the book type references and list them out on a page. That way we already have the information loaded in here. We already know that about the resource. The type of the resource really talks about the purpose of it, what that resource tries to achieve. And the top three here were specifically designed for Quality Stars. So we have these three marked, at least one of these marked for every resource that we've put in for Quality Stars. Whether it's a key resource that is absolutely necessary to satisfy a standard. And the example there is that the parts of the Quality Star standards that deal with core body of knowledge, or ERS, absolutely need to link you to the core body of knowledge itself and resources about the ERS, or you can't satisfy that standard. Example and template materials are what you see most often in the documentation section. Let's see. Yeah, so the documentation section here, you'd see those. These are templates and example resources. So those ones were probably flagged as this. And informational background or justification for a standard or topic, deepening information, things like that. That's what we flagged most of the stuff that was in the clarification statements previously. So stuff that appeared, that was listed here at the bottom of these clarification statements, but is now down here, those are probably listed and flagged as informational background. So that doesn't mean the text informational background, that label, is necessarily going to show up. It's actually sitting in the database with a little number 3 on it, which tells me that it's this type of resource. We could, again, express that by grouping all the informational backgrounds together in a certain place, placing them in a certain part of the interface, putting a little icon on them that tells us that this is just a deepening information or something like that, or, you know, label it whatever we want, really. So this one is also specific to Quality Stars. You can just flag it as, does this belong, and is it a clarification of the language of the standard, or is it something that helps us with documentation? And this actually is being utilized to determine whether things show up, resources show up on the left side here or on the right side over here. So that's specific to Quality Stars. So if there was something specific to something Jessica Howe was doing with Aspire, if we did a resource guide for understanding the CBK, which is something we are working on, then she may not use this custom one, but we may make another custom, you know, set of information that pertains only to her. And then if Ariel went in to flag a resource that she was also using, she'd just ignore that. So we can really do, the more information on a resource, the better. You can write store a blurb and a description. And one thing that's helpful about that is if there are non-link resources, but there are print resources. I don't know, I can't pick one out off the top of my head. Yes, there's one. So, sorry, an offline resource. So this is a print resource. So in the case of print resources, it actually draws upon, it pulls out the description of the resource and then a little bit more information about how to access it. So in this case, it gives the authors and the year it was published to help them look it up at the library or find it on Amazon.
Hamish, this is Kinley. I'm just wondering, can you go back to the screen you were just on the Quality Stars website?
Yep.
Under the resources. Just in my brain right now, I'm thinking, would there be a way where it says resources for the standard? You know, we've got like the first bullet, hints for boosting your ERS score, and then the next thing is actually the ECHR. Is there a way to sort of organize this information so that maybe we could say, you know, I don't know, articles, and list all these like little articles, maybe a little icon that looks like an article, then books with a little icon that looks like a book, and list any books.
Yep. Icons.
Sort of group them.
Yep. So yeah, that kind of the four ways that I like to think about the four kind of tools you have available to yourself to identify more information about these resources is using icons and using other, you know, graphical embellishments that can tell you, using visual grouping to put them together. And so you're saying employing both of them. I think that makes sense. Another thing we can do is link colors, background colors to those groupings, and also where we put them on the page, so placement. So that is definitely something we can do because it's information we have. You know, it's on the back end, so we can respond to that. And I think that is a good idea. We've talked about doing similar things, but I think that makes sense.
Just because, you know, if you're a participant or you're a quality improvement specialist, and you're, you know, I mean, they're so busy, you know, and
right.
If they need an article, say, you know,
right, because they know they don't have time to dig in.
I know that a lot of these resources right now they're like if I was a director and I went in and I wanted to print out an article on why I don't know a particular standard is important to do in my center, because I wanted to give that to my staff so they have a deeper understanding of why I want to institute this at the center. I mean, that's not an option yet, but I hope eventually it will be. But if I'm looking for some specific thing, an article as compared to a book, rather than go through a whole list and try to figure it out, having a little picture there, I think, it just makes it that much faster to get at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And like you said, we can make them come out in order. We can group them by their medium. As we're pulling them out, so that you get 2 articles on top, then your books down below, or maybe we put links on the top. Maybe that'll be the most attractive, so anything that they can just get right online or download. So yeah, I mean, we can identify 2 different things about them even, because we really tried to separate out categories that weren't mutually exclusive. So we can say whether it's a PDF, and then we can also say whether it's an article or a periodical. Or something like that. So we can give both so we can say list all the article links or article type resources at the top, and then we can also identify whether they're PDFs that are available online. So yeah, we can do a lot with that. Absolutely.
Oh, that would be great. I think
so
it's easier for people to use.
Yeah. So if the depth of the resource, the depth and length of the resource can be something that we identify, and then also the accessibility of it, whether it's something they can put their hands on right away, a downloadable. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great.
Well, that's a good thought. So yes, blurb description, and down here we have the set of source information, the author's organization, if they're writing under the auspices of a university or something like that, the publisher, just in case they need to cite or they're looking for the publication, the published date, source location, bibliography is the city and state that often shows up in the bibliography, and then down here just a general open field to put in a formatted reference if they need like APA or something. Or in the case of if it's an organization, that the resource itself is actually an organization, because you can imagine that in some places just putting up ACS or PDI or something like that, or some branch of OCFS could actually be a resource itself. And in that case we would put contact information here, and that would show up when they're trying to access that resource. So the very last part, which is one of the most important, is taking these resources, in this case helps and hints for family child care directors, and saying what standards and what substandards that this applies to. So basically, in the case of the resource guide, which standards should it show up on the list for? So we can look at CBK, ELG, and the 3 sets of Quality Stars standards. We could also put in here the PAS. You could imagine the ECHRs even being in here potentially. We could add them because we have a way of structuring standards in the database so that we can attach things to them. So I'll just look at the Quality Stars center-based standards, and you can see right here this resource is not currently attached to a Quality Stars New York center-based. It is attached to a family-based standard, so communication 2, and here's the full abbreviation that I use in the database, QSNY-FAM-FEC2. So right now, if we go to that standard, we will see this resource listed there because it's connected to this standard. And down here, if we want to add it to more standards, we can navigate through. We can either say, this resource really belongs on every learning environment resource. We could just add it to every single one, or we can expand here, and now we're looking at all the substandards. Home environment, child observation assessment, I could add it to all the HE or all the COA substandards, or I can dive in even deeper and say, you know what, it really only applies to HE3. So then it'll show up on that standard, and I can add and remove those at will. And that actually, without doing anything else, will change what shows up on this list. So that gives Ariel direct access to change the output of the website with doing nothing more but selecting these.
That's awesome.
So that's helpful.
I am thinking you guys are typing all this stuff in there.
Yeah, no, not at
cool.
all. Once that resource exists in one place, we just hang it on different things. Yeah.
That's very cool.
So, and then you can also, if you know your standards codes, rather than navigating through, you can just punch them in. So if I want to add it to LECE4 for the center-based standards, I can just type that code in. And I put that there because I imagine we will become very familiar with those, and it'll actually become a quicker way. And you could actually comma separate a few. So if I wanted to add it to CE1, 3, and 5, I'd just copy this, change it to 1, comma, 3, and 5, and those would go in. So that gives a little quick access. So we're really trying to build out this bank of resources so flexibly that it can really be utilized in different ways on different interfaces. Even if down the road we needed a separate standards resource guide for one population and another one for another, we wouldn't have to redo all the resources stuff. We could just call upon it in different ways, and it all sits in a bank in the resource database. So you can see they all just sit in here, and there's pages and pages of them. 62, I believe that's actually the full set. Do you know how many we have? 65. Yeah, if I just put in a blank search string, it links to all 65 of them. And those are all tagged and flagged with quite a bit of information. But there are many more, yes, as Ariel just pointed out. There are many more that we can have in there. So, right, so the next phase for us is continuing to get resources in here, continuing to get them flagged because that's very useful for us, and also an update to this interface. So we have the priorities of presenting the standards, giving additional instruction on meeting the standards, giving examples and materials for satisfying those standards, and giving a deeper understanding of the importance of those standards. And with those in mind, and they're all here, they're represented, but not necessarily in a balanced and clear way. It's somewhat chaotic. So we are looking forward to next steps in making this clear, making the glossary items pop up automatically, have the clarification statements ever present so that you don't have to click into them, and also giving them a name that you guys would prefer, and finding the appropriate groupings, as you were saying, putting icons and grouping the resources in the best way to present them in the most helpful place. And also, yeah, yep.
This is Sandy. I'm seeing Microsoft Windows Professional screen. It's pretty much black with some writing on it. I don't know if anybody else has that, or...
Try moving your cursor, see if that...
You think it's a cursor? Okay, let's see. It says go to the webinar. It looks like I... Okay.
Yeah, sometimes when your screensaver comes on, yeah, it makes you click back in. Yeah. Okay. So... in getting to the next phase of the interface, we'd love to have feedback from you guys, in thinking about ways to lay it out, what you would want to see as you went through, how it would be easier to access the different standards, the different resources, how we can visually prioritize the different pieces of information that we have. And I can also start to put together some sketches. I already have some thoughts on how to make just navigating to the individual resources a little bit smoother, but we'd obviously, love to hear from you guys on what you feel would be the best way and the most helpful way to present this information. Like, say, particularly the QI specialists who are sitting down with the users who are trying to crunch through this stuff. I'm sure we'll have some great thoughts for us. So, Ariel, do you have a...
I can't hear you.
Right, yeah. Yeah, before I pass the headset back, if you guys have any additional questions or you want to see anything again, everything I showed you except the back end, obviously, there is password protected, but right. But on the front end, this is all fully up on the website and available, again, through Foundations of Quality Standards Resource Guide. And on the home page, yes. And then I think somewhere from just the standards page, maybe not, but we can fix that. So are there any other questions or?
Hamish, will the database, the resource database, be available in some form for the users, for the participants? For the
So yeah, what we could think about doing, if I understand, obviously having them put stuff in would be a whole nother discussion. But in terms of directly searching and accessing resources, if, say, there's a resource they remember seeing when they were in the resource guide or in a meeting with their QI specialist or something, or even the QI specialists themselves say, I really want to find that video observations, the infant toddler environment rating scale, but I don't want to dig through the standards to remember exactly where I saw it. If we wanted to put up a search interface where they could actually just look through our resources, that's definitely something we could do, kind of a public-facing version of this search here that simplifies it a bit, makes it really user-friendly. That's definitely a possibility if we think that would be helpful, if that's something that they would use.
Hamish,
I think right on the spot by saying, when my specialist was here, she said she pulled this thing up, and all I remember is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be a wonderful idea. If you can put in a search so we can find these things easily, then we can pass them on to our sites. That would be excellent.
Yeah, and you know what? What I can do is also in the search results for that, put up a direct link to each resource, what we would call a, what do they call it? A hard link? A link to the, a permalink to the resource so that you can actually copy and paste the link off the page and slap it into an email.
That would be terrific.
Yeah, so
Great.
search results with
Yeah, because I think that the whole issue that we've been going through about how many times they have to click to actually get to something, that could certainly be one way to resolve some of that. If they, sort of have in their mind, oh, I need a resource, on, environmental arrangement of classroom or something, like just be able to plug some keywords in there, maybe that would pull up a variety of things that are applicable to what they're looking for, or if they know exactly what the particular resource was called, that would certainly save a lot of that clicking.
Yep. If they want to, absolutely. If they want to return to something. Yeah, the other thing we can think about doing is, further back in the process so that they start going into the resource guide, but they don't have to go all the way. If they say, I know it was something in learning environment, so if on the learning environment screen we had something that said, show me all the resources listed under learning environment, and then it gives them a big page with stuff grouped, all the articles related to learning environment, all the books, something like that. We could even do that. And we wouldn't, we wouldn't be retyping titles. We'd just be pulling them out of the database. So that's a definite possibility.
Yeah, sometimes when the specialists are working with programs, they actually are in Wells. And would we be able to, for instance, on the resource on the quality improvement page where we're working through some quality improvement strategies, be able to copy and paste those permalinks so that the programs can go through their portal and say, oh, that's where it is?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We could do both, link them directly to a standard in the resource guide, and I did set that up so that, when you go through, if you look at the URL bar up here, you can see that this standard has kind of an arbitrary ID that pulls it up. 744 means nothing to humans, but there's an optional way to call this up that actually calls it up based on the code. In this case, it'd be QSNY-CTR-LE-CE-1. that can actually be put into the URL bar. So I could hand links to wells to actually work into the system there. It's a matter of them being willing to do it, but I can also make those available to you guys to pop in where you have an ability to link either to a standard, a specific standard, or to a specific resource. Right now it's in place that I could give it to you for the specific standard. I could put a little thing over here that says copy the link to this standard, and you could paste it in. But I can also do that for the resource, for sure.
And so we'll finish out and think, and I'll work with the specialist to figure out what's going to be the best approach.
Yep.
Because I imagine many of these users will, want to bookmark this stuff in some place in their own way of doing it. And
yeah.
They'll think it through.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I'm just taking a couple notes.
Thank you so much for this today. It's really been helpful to see, I guess, sort of the behind the curtain,
Yeah.
Just having that sort of better understanding about how everything on the website, how it's getting there and where it comes from and how, pieces can be moved and linked. And for me, it's been very helpful to see all of that.
Excellent. Oh, I'm glad. That's what makes it fun for me. So it's nice to see. Yeah, I think it is good to know what's possible. You kind of have to know a bit about how it's all shuffled around back there.
Yeah, and like you said, I think that the feedback from Mary and the quality improvement specialist will really, that's going to be really useful, because more than likely, at least for, a fairly long time, I would think those are the folks that are really going to be accessing the resource guide on a regular basis more often than anybody else until, time goes by and it's just more popular, more widely used.
Right.
And, then there's going to be a whole different set of how will this best, suit parents or, policymakers or whatever. But for now, I think the specialists are the folks that are really key to, we want to make this a good, useful tool for them and for the participants. So
absolutely.
Yeah. For those of you that are on the line, please share your feedback.
Yep. And don't be shy. I have no pride about the way things are laid out. So yeah, don't worry about my feelings.
Well, Ariel has recorded this, so I'm definitely going to be sharing the link with the folks so that we can get some additional feedback.
Yeah, and if it'll help, I can put together screenshots of this back end that's not available to the public, and even put together a little bit of a couple bullet points about how things work on the back end, if that helps to think about stuff. Certainly, at least a list of the attributes of each resource that we have available.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful not only for the QI specialists but for our work group.
Yep. All right, well, I'm going to hand the headset back to Ariel. Thanks for your patience with all our technical difficulties.
Oh, no. Thank you so much, Hamish. It's been really, really great.
My pleasure. Here she is.
Thanks so much, Hamish. Hi, everyone. So I think that's it on our end for today. Kimberly, is there anything you want to discuss before we sign off?
I don't think so. I think that, Barbara and I are going to try to sort of reconvene and think about our next call for the PDTA subgroup and where we're going from there. We're still working on getting clarification statements written, submitted, handed in, trying to identify folks who can help us with those. So, we'll just keep plugging away at that. But I guess, just thanks to the folks who were able to be on the call today. And thank you, Ariel, for setting it up. And Mary, especially, it was a great idea to invite the quality improvement specialist. I'm so glad you thought about that. I'm glad you're there.
Well, it's recorded, so all the specialists can listen to it and view it.
That's great. I'm sure that, I'm sure they've been busy. So, But that's it. I'm all set. So if anybody else, Mary, Sandy, you guys have anything else to share?
I'm all set. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, everyone have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch again. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you. Great week.
Bye-bye.